Welcome to the Global Radio Ideas webinar. My name is Ken Benson from the P1 Media Group, and live from Germany, my esteemed co-host from Benztown, Andy Sanneman. Welcome, Andy.
Hey guys, how are you?
Today's webinar. You're welcome.
So today's webinar, thanks for joining us inside the Brooke and Jeffrey morning show and podcast.
Yeah,
that's the title of the show today. There's Brooke, there's Jeffrey. The chat box is activated. Let us know where you're watching, and if you have a question, type it in while we're having that show, and our guests will hopefully answer all your questions after the show. So let's get this going.
All right, so let's jump in here. Tell you a little bit more about Brooke and Jeffrey. They've been on a morning show in Seattle since 2011, and today's show reaches millions of listeners every morning in over 50 American markets, as well as having some of the most popular comedy podcasts in the world. So we'll get to both today. Let's tell you about Brooke. She's a self-described small town girl living in the big city and living the dream. She's been waking up listeners for 20 years and previously hosted the first all-female morning show on a top 40 radio station. She was voted one of the top 25 most beautiful people in the Pacific Northwest, alongside a few big-time celebs like Ryan Reynolds and Macklemore. Well done.
It's a Pacific Northwest, Ken. It's not a.
Well, yeah. Well, you and Bill Gates.
Yeah, I mean, there's where we're right in the same line.
Macklemore, that's a good comparison.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she was also honored with the Marconi Award, which is a very prestigious radio award from the NAB in America. And to her left is her co-host and partner, Jeffrey, originally from LA, moved to Seattle to attend college, but then he found his calling in radio, much to his parents' disappointment.
Yeah.
He served as an on-air personality and executive producer of the Marconi Award-winning show, and then stepped into the co-host role, which, again, we'll get into all this as we have the chat this morning. Jeffrey is also well known for his parody songs, which he performs every Friday live on the show. And to date, he's written and sung more than 300.
Wow.
He took over the co-hosting duties.
I think more,
yeah, I'll take 300.
More?
I'm just going to look it up.
Okay, it's 3,000.
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. That's no lie. No lie.
All right. So live from the flagship station where it all began, Moving 92.5 in Seattle, please welcome Brooke and Jeffrey.
Hey, thanks for having us. Yeah, we were really honored that when Ken sent us an email and asked us to do this. So thank you, Ken. And Andy, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people feel if Ken sends them an email. You know, that happens. So,
I had actually with called some people to get Brooke to return my call, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know who you're talking about. So, Brooke and Jeffrey, let's begin. Icebreaker, my favorite question. So, what is something people may not know about the Brooke and Jeffrey show?
I think probably the biggest is that it's all pre-recorded.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The day before, at least. Just because part of syndicating is we have to syndicate backwards across the country, and it's impossible to put on a show the same day if you're doing it backwards.
We did it for a minute, and it didn't make any sense. We were posting things on social media for our live market, and then that was going out to everybody, but it just got really confusing. And I know that there are definitely some radio purists who hate the idea of not having a live show, but to us, we also don't want to waste any of our listeners' time. So it gives us a chance to edit and clean things up. And, there is something about being live that's magical, right? But there's also something about giving people the best show possible. And that's what our goal is every day.
Well, I appreciate the honesty and transparency. I don't know if everybody would come through and say that, but it's kind of old school, right? We're live.
I don't know.
But it speaks to the different type of show that you guys have, where it actually works like that. And again, we'll talk about this during today's webinar. So let me just start with this first question. Knowing this now that the show is recorded, it's never live. And also you guys have a long history, about 15 years now. What makes the show tick?
Oof.
1980s sound effects is definitely number one. We doubled our sound effects this year, and it's just blown up. It's been great.
I think really our show, we have one goal, and that's for comedy. That's for laughter, right? And everything passes through that filter. Will this make someone laugh? And our producer is the ultimate say. The way that we have our show working is that every member of our show contributes in terms of writing, in terms of ideas, and then producer Boyd is the one that says, yep, this fits with what we're doing, or let's rework it and figure out how to make this better. We think of ourselves as a comedy show. We are a comedy show. You know, I think that's why it works in syndication. I think that's why it works in podcast. Just like a sitcom works, you know, all across the country, comedy wins, laughter wins. And I think it's needed more now than ever before.
Yeah. Regardless of demographics you're talking about, everybody likes to laugh. So if you can make people laugh, they're going to want to listen. They're going to want to hear what you have to say if it's funny. And I think another thing that we do that kind of keeps things fresh, that might be a little controversial, is we like keep secrets from each other all the time.
Oh yeah.
We don't tell each other about our lives, so that when it comes out, it's coming out for the first time on the air, and you only get a genuine reaction from somebody once.
Yeah.
And that's how we produce. We produce for each other's genuine reactions, because if the hosts in the studio are reacting really well to it, then chances are the listeners are going to mirror those emotions and feel it.
That's interesting.
Captivating. So
like over the weekend, I was like, oh my God, I came in and Alexis, her desk is right next to me. And I go, I want to tell you something so bad, but I can't.
Yeah.
But I will when we record here in an hour.
Yeah. So a lot of tension in the studio, but it makes good radio, I think.
Yeah.
So it's all about comedy and laughter. That's the driver of the show.
For sure.
For our show, yes.
Yeah.
Well done. So you guys started in Seattle about 15 years ago. I live in Portland, which was your first affiliate after Seattle. So you've been on here about 10 years and have kicked butt ever since you got here. But one of the first things that struck me when I heard the show is obviously it's different. I mean, you recorded and therefore not doing a lot of the same tried and true things most morning shows do. Talking about what happened overnight, news or, the topics of the day. And it's more centered in comedy. What really struck me at first too is you have, and still to this day, you have these two benchmarks that you do so well. The second date update, and then of course the phone taps, which are basically the prank phone calls that you do. And as a programmer, originally I'm like, man, they do these things great, but what's next? Do these things burn out? Does it evolve? And much to my chagrin, it hasn't. It continues to do well. And I think you told us right before we went live, just in the last 5 years, between the two features or benchmarks that you guys do, you've recorded over 1,500 of them, which is remarkable. So congratulations on that. I guess now you're probably waiting for a question.
You can keep saying nice things. That's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, pouring on the love first, then we'll get to the questions.
Yeah.
So the way the show is marketed through Premier Networks is it's a different type of morning show. So how is the show different, and how do you keep it fresh after all these years?
Yeah. First, we are a benchmark heavy show. So those are our two biggest benchmarks that you named, but we have about 14 others.
At least. I want to say it's like 17 or 18.
So, I mean, it is definitely a challenge to be creative within the constraints of those benchmarks, right? And it doesn't mean that there isn't a ton of creativity happening. It just means that you have to push yourself even further to keep it here, right? What was the next part of the question?
About keeping the show fresh?
Yeah. Okay, do you want to start there?
I mean, I think part of keeping the show fresh is just like, I hate to do it, but it's like staying up on social media and staying up on social media trends. And if you can weave some of what's happening online into what's happening in your show, that really keeps it like modern and what everybody's talking about. Like we'll try to incorporate modern things that are happening in dating trends into our second date segment. and just try and bring it in and have a conversation about it, even if it doesn't have to do with what they're actually doing on their date. Just talking about it makes it seem like it's new and it's happening and we haven't discussed it before.
And our producer gives us different challenges, right? So like we all come up with ideas for all of the different segments. And sometimes when maybe we're plateaued or we're like just feeding him the same stuff all the time, he goes, hey, listen, everybody's going to go watch the show iCarly. And you're going to find 3 different ideas from that show. It can be a way to make a joke, and borrow, because that's what, that's what we do. we borrow and we make it our own, which is, what creativity is.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So let's have some people borrow some strategies from you. So your show underwent a significant transition, Brooke, when Jeffrey took over as co-host, I think in 2020. And since then, you never lost momentum, right? So what advice would you offer to content directors, programmers facing similar situations? So what can they borrow basically from the strategies that you use to do that transition?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think outwardly it felt like a major transition, but inwardly for our team, it didn't. This has always been an ensemble show. It's always been a show that's not just about one person. And that really served us in that transition. It also gave us some time to reflect on different ways to create and different ways to also create a safe environment where people feel good, right? Because it's really hard to come into a place and not feel good and then still be funny and creative. Like those things don't mesh. So you have to come into a space where you feel safe to share your ideas. And that's something where we really regained that in the transition, which was fantastic. In terms of branding, we get so caught up in thinking that people care so much about us, right? It's all about us.
Well, it's true.
But change is a lot easier for audiences than we give them credit for. I mean, you're going to have a period, no matter what change you make, where people are upset, right? Because there's that initial reaction like, whoa, something's different. Me no likey. And then you get over that hump and you explain to people what's going on and how you're feeling and how you're feeling hopeful and how you're excited for this. And suddenly they're all on board with you. So, I really take from it that I grew a lot in that transition. I grew a lot professionally. I grew a lot personally. And, as hard and tumultuous as it was, because Jeffrey and I have worked together for 16 years or something crazy. Yeah. For both of us, I was also really proud of him. We were expecting the world of him and he stepped up and I hope that he felt the entire time that he was supported by us. Does that answer? Is that too much?
No.
Okay.
You could say more nice stuff about me, but
okay,
yeah, that was good. I think, for us, it was a unique situation that even though we switched some stuff around, it was still the same core group. So we didn't have to do a big shift in what we were already doing. Like for us, it was just a little bit of a rebrand. It wasn't completely reinventing the show. And I don't think we didn't want to draw attention to it. Because I think if you make a big deal about hey, listeners, everybody, everything is changing, we're doing a whole new thing, I think that actually scares people more than just letting them listen, letting them figure it out. And they're going to be more accepting if they get to choose the journey rather than you dictating the journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's you're rebranding, you're not reinventing, and you're not telling everybody we're doing something totally new and you're gonna love it.
Yeah. Just
let listeners experience it and have their own journey with it, and they'll provide the natural feedback to make that transition feel natural and seamless.
Well, Brooke, you made a good choice.
Thanks. Yeah.
Me, right? Okay.
Yeah. We picked him
All
up
right,
out
so-
of promotions when I was I was maybe 28 or 29.
Yeah, that's a nice guess.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk for a second about syndicated morning shows because they're becoming increasingly the norm for American radio. And your show today is heard in over 50 markets, but I'm sure not every affiliate is executing it the same way. So from your point, there we go. From your point of view, what are the most significant missed opportunities stations make when it comes to localizing your show and really making it part of their radio station?
I think one, I don't know if this is going to come off right or not, but I think one is also is just not trusting us, right? Not trusting that we have come up with this formula that will win for them, right? We have put in so much time and research into how the clocks work and where we're placing different segments. Like it's not just, oh, that sounds good there. There is time and energy and thoughtfulness put into everything. And we've been doing it for 15 years. And we feel like we've really mastered how to, one, keep the forward momentum going, and two, utilize our segments in a way that really will get you those quarter-hour wins that you need. So that's part one, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people want the shows to sound like they're local to the area where they're being played. I think that's something that's a little bit of an old school thought, that everybody wants it to sound like it's here. I think sometimes people over-index in wanting it to sound like it's local, and you have the radio host saying things like, Lake Wobble Slosh Reservoir is happening, and it makes you actually sound like more of a foreigner. And I don't think it needs to sound as local as everybody wants it to, because like I said, comedy is global. Like if it's funny, people won't care where it's from. If it's in New York or if it's in Europe or wherever it is, you'll want to listen. You'll want to hear it because it's just entertaining.
But I do think that the shows that win, the stations that win, are the ones that do really rely on us to do those liners and those sweepers that bring in those local aspects.
There is a missed opportunity. Sorry to interrupt. There is a missed opportunity to get us involved in all parts of the show.
Yeah.
Where it's like hear us all throughout the day.
Yeah. So including us in the day parts, and that could be contesting or promos, I think is huge. Phil Becker in Portland did that right away. And we still, have people when we go to industry events, assuming that we are a Portland radio show, because they did such a great job there. And they continue to do such a great job there in making sure that our promos are running throughout the day, that we send out to all of our affiliates, that our Tomorrow on the shows are happening, that we have liners and sweepers that are localizing us to that area. Because I think the biggest misconception, and I get it, like I have been let go because of a syndicated show before. Like I get it as a radio person, it's hard. Like it's hard that this is the way that a lot of radio is going, and it's people's jobs, right? Like it's people's livelihoods. I get it can be hard to then accept a syndicated show, but we truly want to win for our affiliates. Like we feel like we are part of their team. Every station we're at, and there is no station too small for us to read copy for ever, and make it sound local and make it sound like us. And, and we really appreciate those people that put forth that effort, because we do know it's a big lift. It's a big lift to do.
Well, let's switch gears now. Talked about the morning show quite a bit. And Brooke, when you and I were chatting about today's conversation last week, you mentioned your podcast and how you guys have some really successful and high-ranking podcasts. But what really struck me is when you said that the revenue from your podcast is rivaling the radio show. So,
the syndication, not the radio show, the syndication.
Okay, the syndication. So tell us more about that, because I think a lot of people watching today are going to be stunned by that. And why? Well, how is this happening, and why is it happening, and what can they learn from this? Because podcasts, as you know, I mean, every company's asking their people to do podcasts, but it's not just doing a podcast, it's creating a successful podcast that has an audience that, like you are, ultimately monetizing.
Yeah, I think that radio forgets, like, I think we need to pat ourselves on the back when it comes to audio entertainment. We are the masters. We know more than any podcaster ever could. And when I listen to podcasts of podcasters, there's so many inside jokes that I don't get. There's so much time wasted at the front and the back. And right now there's a lot of patience for that, but I don't know how long that will last. And I think in the end, the radio people are going to rise to the top of the podcasting platforms. I just think that there's no way around it. And it's also really exciting. I may be getting away from your question right now, Ken. I'm so sorry, but it's really exciting for me because to be in radio is to be always told that if you don't get them in 5 seconds, 2 seconds, half a millisecond, then they're never going to listen to you again. And they're not choosing to listen to you. You're their background noise and you got to cut through and X, Y, and Z. And podcasting is such a different audience because you have people seeking you out, searching you, and then choosing to spend a full hour listening to you. Like, my mind is blown by that. Like, I think that is just an incredible honor. I think there's just so much potential there. And I think that radio people shouldn't overthink this podcast thing. What they're doing on their shows, what is working, will work on podcasts. You just have to have a little patience. And I think that the reason our second dates have worked so well is because they're 20 minutes, they're digestible, and they are, what you're going to get every episode, right? You know exactly what you're going to get. And people come to it and they love that about it.
Yeah, that's part of what people love about radio is the consistency of it. Is they know if I tune in at 8:10 every day or 8:20 every day, I'm going to get this segment. I'm going to hear this. They're going to talk about that. And you can just put that onto a podcast form and it's just as familiar and just as heartwarming, and people will want to come back to it every week or every day and, just feel that familiarity.
Yeah,
I think
you're so right. A lot of people miss so many opportunities, in my opinion, like radio people going to podcasts earlier and making a mark there. It's kind of sad if you see, like you said, there's so many people basically come from nowhere and like having like home runs, and people from radio who were working with audio their entire life dismissed that opportunity big time. I also think like what you said is really interesting, that you're not looking for the transition listening, because that's, I think, what a lot of radio stations do wrong. They basically want to get their listeners on the podcast, while you want to basically get discovery, like people want to find you on the podcast and maybe then transition to radio, maybe, but it's not so important. But like people should find you differently than from the radio. I think a lot of the radio stations did that wrong, thinking, okay, we're going to do a podcast and get even more from our existing listeners, while like not, like you always said, see what's working and trying to get the discovery from the podcast platform and from the podcast listeners per se. So.
And it's crazy how much audience is out there, right?
Yeah,
so
unbelievable.
Yeah, and like in our markets where we do the best, we also do the best in podcasts. Like, it's not taking away from radio. There's no bleeding of our ratings because we're also doing it via podcast. If anything, they just work together like this. And it's also interesting, like even within our podcast, so we have 3 channels, and one of them is just our second date, right? And that's the one that is just going bonkers. Then we have our full show main feed, and that gets like 2 million downloads a month. It's chugging along, it's doing good. But what's fascinating to me is when you look at where people are listening from. So 75% of our second date listeners are from Spotify. 75% of our main feed listeners are from Apple Podcasts. Like, these are 2 different audiences. And so it's just weird that there's not a lot of crossover there even. Like, it just,
How is YouTube working for you guys? Because so many people listening to podcasts on YouTube is crazy. I saw them, it's like crazy statistics on podcast listening on YouTube. If it's like video format, it's like significant.
Yeah.
Like for the big ones, at least.
Mm-hmm. So we're definitely growing YouTube fairly quickly right now.
Yeah, YouTube's the hardest one, I think, to grow subscribers and get new followers because it doesn't share that well across the platform, but it is growing. And part of what we do is whenever we're promoting our podcast is to say it. We're just like, check out, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple. Like if you just say it, sometimes people will be like, oh yeah, I should go check it out there.
Yeah, and I think everything's going towards, I mean, YouTube, of course, we put all of our podcasts up there as well, you know, but everybody wants to be like YouTube right now. Like Spotify is starting to go all video, YouTube starting to go all video. Yeah. And while we have some video for our show, we don't have video for our second date updates. So that's, you know, those are things that we're trying to figure out as a show. Like, okay, how do we stay in? How do we stay on board? How do we stay meeting listeners' demands, which video is the next step, right? But it's so exhausting. There's so much work to be done.
Yeah, it's crazy if you think about the setups. I mean, that goes a little bit in my next question, which is more like a production question for the audio show. But I mean, you see that on the video as well. I mean, there's like definitely like people that are putting so much money into YouTube, like into the production of the actual podcast. It's kind of crazy. So the production behind Brooke and Jeffrey obviously is very tight. It's well thought out. So can you walk us through the daily, and it can be really quick, like daily production schedule, like what gets done the day before, what is the day off the show, and how you operate across the team? Like what is the different roles?
Do you want to just go over what we did today so far?
Gosh, what have we've done so much today.
Okay. We get to work around 5:30-ish, give or take. Since we're pre-recorded, I've been getting
some of us
a little
get
later.
Here earlier, but yeah,
we've been getting here later too.
Yeah,
and then today we tape what we have ready. So today, like we taped 2 different shot callers, show intros, which is the first segment of the day. So we taped 2 of those today. We taped some laser story teases today already. Those are about 2-minute segments. We taped a game that we do, Win Brooks Bucks, which is called Beat Brooke on syndication because of the you know, what am I trying to say, gaming and giveaway issues.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there isn't like a consistent schedule that we stick to. We do some writing for the day before. We do some writing the day of. We try to knock out as much of the recording as we can.
Oh, and you did a phone tap today.
Did a prank call today.
So what time is it? So, you know, we get some stuff done. And then at the end of the day, we save the last half hour of the day to do all of our liners, all of our spots.
And editing.
Wow.
Is that helpful or is that chaos?
It feels like chaos to me. That's what it feels like. But
we do have a show sheet. And
it's creative. It's creative chaos. It's fine. It's creative chaos.
Well, what strikes me is that, you know, you guys are recorded every day and you still get up and you're in the building before 6 a.m. working. So that's remarkable. I'd sleep into like 10 and then come in and work. But
no way, dude. I love having a second day. I call it second day. I go home and I take a 10-minute coffee nap and then I wake up for second day. Working in the morning is great.
All right. So you're watching the Global Radio Ideas webinar with our guests, Brooke and Jeffrey. You got a question? We'll get to them in a few minutes. Just type them in the chat box and we'll fire away shortly. So get ready, you guys. A few more things we want to cover. You guys were just talking about how the end of your day, you're doing your liners for stations, you're recording your ads. And the insight for this question actually came from Phil Becker, who you mentioned, who first brought you to Portland. And he says your show features a mix of local and national endorsements that they're fun to listen to. But how do you get the clients on board with letting you write and voice creative and do non-traditional ad reads instead of going with the typical canned scripts? And of course, we all know that station endorsements from the personalities are super important, drive more revenue than traditional ads. And certainly the way you guys do them is a way that most stations would probably like to do them, but don't. So what advice or thoughts do you have on this matter?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that we get to do all of our own endorsements in our own voice, but we don't win all those battles. We do a lot of scripted stuff too, because that's what the client wants. And that's fine. That's fine. It's interesting to me. I think that starts with your sales team and your sales team believing in you and believing in your voice and believing in your product. And I never understand why anyone would buy an endorsement if they just want to write the script for it. Like, what's the point?
It's a good question.
Have someone else voice this. It doesn't matter what I'm saying, and it's not authentic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of new to doing all the endorsement stuff since I've usually been behind the scenes, but as a new talent, the things that I think really works if you want to have your your talent's voice and personality come through is just give like bullet points.
Yeah.
Do the bullets and then say, be
Make
yourself around it. And that usually works and speaks to the clients and the listeners pretty well.
And we talk to our sales teams too. Like, our AEs are so amazing, and we'll tell them, hey, listen, they'll ask, like, how do you want this sent? And we always say bullet points are great. Please include and highlight anything that you need read verbatim, because we also understand that there's some things that, parts of messages that do have to be word for word. And then everybody's usually pretty happy at the end. And if spots can be entertaining, then maybe we can keep people through them.
Yeah,
that's true.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, that's true. I think that's completely true, right? You've got to be interesting, entertaining, fun. And when you guys do that, you're successful. I mean, the same reason why people, I'm going to say this because I see people on from Europe and also some European PPM markets that may not have heard your show before and don't realize that maybe some of your features that you're really well known for, like Second Date Update, I mean, I'm guessing, but they could last 8 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah. There's part 1 and part 2. And they always have to be over 6 minutes. They did change things to a 3-minute time limit for your quarter hour, but we set it up so each segment is always over 6 minutes because we want to keep people for that 5 minutes in the quarter hour. And then we set it up so we hopefully can get 2 quarter hours out of it. So
right
in timing, and we're really, really particular about making sure things run on time here at our home station. That is really, really important. And it's really important to our success in the world of meters.
Right. And I think the other point is great content people will stick around for. You guys have proven that for years. It doesn't matter if it's 2 minutes or 9 minutes. If it's great and holds people's attention, it's better than playing a song.
Yeah. The biggest compliment that we ever get is when people tell us like, oh God, like I had to go into work, but it was so funny. I had to hear the end of that second date call. So yeah, I was late and I got reprimanded, but it was worth it. If the content's good, we'll listen.
That's the best compliment. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So Brooke, question for you. Prior to the Brooke and Jeffrey show, you were part of 2 all-female morning shows, first in Spokane, Washington, and then in Seattle. Mm-hmm. And I've heard this question almost my entire career. Why aren't there more female hosted morning shows or all female morning shows? What's your thought on that?
It's a hard question. I think a lot of it comes down into confidence, women in themselves, in their abilities. I think it also comes down to confidence from the higher ups. And I also feel, in my experience, even when you're the host of that show, there's a lot of men who want to have a lot of opinions about it. And I was so young, in hindsight, there are some things I really wish I would have pushed back on, like calling it the ladies' room, like how cliche. I'm sorry, but listen, it can just be a morning show. And I think that that's what happened in Spokane, where it worked so well is, I was just out of college and Casey Christopher was our program director at the time. And he looked around and I still thank him so much for this, but he looked around and he said, wow, the best talent I have right now is females. And that station for 2 years, which was KZZU in Spokane, ran an all-female air shift from mornings through nights. For 2 years, we were number 1. And never once did we brand ourselves as the women's show, as the station with all the girls, because as soon as you do that, you alienate half of your market. And And that's ridiculous. Like, women aren't in radio just to attract women. Women are in radio because we are all of the things that men are, right? We are just as talented. We are just as funny. We have just as much, charisma and thinking as everybody else. Like, we wouldn't say to, the station that has all the male jocks, well, this is the all male station, because there goes your women listeners, right? Like, that would be dumb.
Sounds cool to me.
So,
I would be
yeah.
well,
go to a rock show, I guess. But but I just think that it's overthought and it's sometimes pigeonholed and stereotyped. I think is
absolutely
the reason why a lot of them don't succeed.
Yeah, men are fickle, and
absolutely.
You hear ladies' room and you're like, oh, I guess that's a show for ladies. So you get scared as a guy to be a part
I
of
think
it.
that stereotype labeling is a problem, like throughout everything, like through the male female topicality, the diverse, like everything that's like labeled too strict is kind of like turning people off.
Don't even get me started on the term girl boss. Okay, girl boss term drives me nuts. It's just boss. That's all it is. It's just boss.
Yeah. So switching gears again, charities. So Brooke, you're involved in a lot of them. We discussed that a little bit before. So American Heart Association, Komen Foundation, Action Against Hunger, Heart to Heart International, and a lot more. So why is this work so important for you, and how does it contribute to your show?
I truly feel that the position that we're in is a position of great responsibility. And how you use that responsibility is important. And what feels good to me, I feel like will feel good to listeners. And it's just something I have to do. It's part of who I am, I guess.
We inflict so much emotional damage through our segments that it's our responsibility to at least.
Yeah, so you'll be like, oh, positive. I'll have to do something.
Yes, I mean, when we are traumatizing this many people, we have to give back. And it does. I think the listeners feel involved when they hear there's an opportunity that we're providing to give back to the community. It makes them feel like, oh, wow, I'm actually doing something great, even if it's just buying a T-shirt or, sending a $5 donation. Everybody needs to feel that feeling of giving back in whatever way. And it's like we're giving the listeners that chance too.
Yeah, thanks for doing all that. I think it's a great example of like giving back and being responsible, like if you're, like you said, Brooke, in that type of position. So what's next for you guys?
Oh, man.
Next big things, great ideas.
App would be great.
No, we're just still trying to build a 360-degree brand, right? A 360-degree show. And that means, how can we reach more people? How can we continue to bring some joy and levity to this world that I think it so desperately needs? And whether that's podcasts, whether that's social media, we're always looking at how are other people doing it? How are YouTubers doing it? How are, even syndicated sitcoms doing it? Like, what are other people doing outside of radio that we can start emulating so that we can reach that same mass appeal and mainstream popularity as they do?
Yeah. So like Brooke was saying, we're working on bringing more of a visual aspect into our show, recording more things on camera, and like working on getting second dates.
Oh my God. And look at our pretty new studio. That was part. Thanks.
Oh, I thought you were going to say me, but no, the studio's nice too.
So that was, our parent company, Hubbard Radio, they've been great and truly supportive of us in every stage of this. And I know we talked about that big transition that the show had. One thing I didn't bring up is how integral they were and how much they believed in what we were doing and what a true, for lack of a better word, blessing that was to all of us. So, yeah.
Great. Well, you have time for a couple questions from the viewers?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you have a question, type it in right now and we'll get to it and get to as many as we can. So first one comes from Anna Marie. How many hours a day do you usually work, and how many producers do you have to help with the workload?
Yeah, so we have one producer Boyd, and then we have a social media producer, We call him Digital Jake. He is also in charge of making sure that all of our syndicated markets get all the audio or the photos and pictures and plans for the show. Then we have a technical director, and his job is to get all of the audio out to our affiliates and also make sure it gets on our air here. Jeffrey gets to serve as assistant producer still.
Yeah, and I'm still on a producing partial role. Just it helps if you have a producer that's in the room.
Yeah,
that can help direct the segments. But
and then every person on our show writes and some edit. And every person on our show is here at least 8 hours a day.
Okay. Question from Greg Kelmore. A major example scenario, major news story breaks that affects your 50 plus markets listeners after your show is recorded. So how is that addressed?
We don't cover news.
We've done a couple times where the next morning we'll come in really early and do something that gets sent out. If it's really important, just do a 2-minute update. But it's like Brooke said, we're not really a news show. Our job isn't to tell you the big thing that's happening in the world. We're the show to escape from what's happening in the world and to laugh. I mean, truly,
I'm not sure if Greg meant like hardcore news. I think he mean more like maybe a newsworthy story that might be entertaining or something. But I think everybody gets what you're.
Even then, okay, so are you talking pop culture? If we're doing pop culture,
stuff? So maybe I don't know what he's hinting, what he's going to. I mean, obviously, I don't know where he's hinting at, but I think it makes it clear what you said is absolutely fine. So
yeah.
I think generally we just try to stick to entertaining stories, and if it's funny, we'll use it. If it's serious news, we tend to avoid it and just let the million other news stations do their job.
Yeah, I mean nobody's coming to us to learn anything.
No,
it's not why we're attracting people.
We're the radio equivalent.
Yeah. Maybe you do a new benchmark. You don't want to learn anything. Maybe do a new benchmark.
we did have a care or don't care benchmark for a while, so that's close, right?
So let's grab another question. This comes from Ray Canoe, if I got that name right. Maybe not. I apologize if I did not. How do you draw a listener's attention within the first few seconds of them hearing your voice? Any strategies or recommendations?
Yeah, I mean,
I tend to lead off most of the segments. And so what I'll do is either try to pose, it has to be short. You have to pose a really short, interesting question. I don't know, what's the craziest thing that you've ever done inside of a movie theater? And then you let that hang there for a second. And then you start to tell the story about whatever it is, or you tell a funny joke in one sentence. That's what it takes usually to grab people.
I think also too, you have to be really careful of not saying the same thing every time, right? We all have our crutches, right? And the sooner you can learn those crutches, the sooner you can avoid them. So mine is saying, after everything, Yep. So I try not to,
Yeah, usually you need somebody else to listen to it and point it out, be like, that you say every 10 seconds.
Yeah. So
be careful.
I mean, it's just always evaluating your own sound. Go back, listen.
Okay, so last question is, how is the show coached?
Coached. We have some great consultant who we love, and we haven't had a meeting in a while. I think we all coach each other as well. Like I said, the way our show is set up is producer Boyd is the top of the triangle, and then all ideas flow through him, right? So if you're in a writer's block, if you are saying too much on the show, he's the one that's going to pull you in and be like, hey, listen to this is what I heard. And we all trust each other. So I think that is a really important piece of coaching, is to have mutual trust and respect.
Yeah. Well done.
Well, thanks, you guys. Brooke and Jeffrey, been an absolute pleasure to have you on the webinar and sharing your insights today. We very much appreciate it.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely.
It was really fun.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much.
people enjoyed it. So if they didn't,
Yeah.
you know where to send the complaint.
It seems like that.
Yeah, go to the website and complain.
Seems like that.
Yeah. No, go to
Yeah,
Ken.
exactly.
Email Ken Benson.
Yeah. Just type in Ken's email and send everybody sending Ken an email, basically complaining like.
Well, you guys can certainly put my email out there. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I've been called worse.
We love it.
All right. Well, before we go, just a quick thanks to our.
No, but you read it in the
Robbie.
show tomorrow. You read it in the show tomorrow. Ken's email. Just basically tell your listeners to send Ken an email.
Bring it on, baby.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to watch this again or share this video with somebody who missed it, I advise you do, especially if the person does a morning show or coaches a morning show or is somehow involved with the morning show. It will be available tomorrow afternoon on the P1 Media Group website, also available on our YouTube channel. We'll share it with Brooke and Jeffrey. They can do what they want to do with it, even delete it, I guess. But feel free to watch it again and share it. And we'll be back in about a month or so with our next webinar. Stay tuned for details in your inbox and on our social channels. So again, thank you, Brooke and Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much for doing that. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.